So the first thing I like sharing a little bit of background. So what I do, my name is Matt Curtis. For those who don't know, I help creatives make the jump to freelance. And so typically what that looks like is I've been a creative for a long time. I'm very hesitant about making the jump to freelance. There's a lot of things that are scary or uncertain. The risk feels overwhelming, and so I help address a lot of those challenges and complexities just along the way. One of the things I've encountered that really is a it's a common one for freelancers is pricing. For me, I struggled a lot with even being comfortable making the jump to freelance because I didn't know how to price. And I heard I heard all of these wonderful pieces of advice like just define the lifestyle that you want and just price towards that. And so that sounds great. Yeah, I'd love to have 3 Lamborghinis in the driveway. So I'll charge $500,000 for a logo. The problem, though, is that that's just not how it works in real life. And so today, that's what we're going to talk about. I want to address just that fear in the beginning. What is that? That tension, that challenge, that difficulty that we encounter. What is it that determines a price? We're going to talk about how to find your base rate, and then we're going to talk about building a bid that is coherent and logical. And I want to make it clear this really is designed to be preventing you from undercharging. This does not represent the cap. As you gain experience, you'll become more profitable. As you gain kind of notoriety and the quality of your work continues to improve and gets more recognition, you can always raise prices. We're looking at not undercharging. That's what we're looking at. So a lot of this for me started as I was leading a creative team. There was a conversation that I had where we were bringing somebody in from the outside and we needed freelance support. Their rate was $100 an hour. And I said, that's great. You do excellent work. You're fast and we need help. So that sounds great. Then I go and I talk to my boss and he was very concerned. He said, we do not pay our designers $100. Why would we be paying this other designer $100? And that was really where I got my first glimpse at sort of like the company side of what this negotiation looks like. And so all of this is based in reality. And I think that's actually a really important place for us to start. So we'll kick it off by just addressing the fear that kind of hangs over all of this. I'm afraid of undercharging. That's something I hear all the time. It prevents people from moving forward, taking any steps in a positive direction. And I guess I just want to say it's okay if you do this. If you bid a project and you realize that it's bigger than you bid, you can still serve the client well and you can make it to the other side. We're looking to not do that over the long haul, but don't let the fear of making a mistake in your bidding prevent you from moving forward. There are plenty of projects that I've done where I simply did not account for all the variables. And that's something we're going to get some light shed on today. What are those variables? If you don't move forward, you're never going to get better at pricing. So I just want to throw that out there as an encouragement to hopefully short circuit some of that fear of always being afraid of guessing wrong. Sometimes you just have to move forward. And if you get a client that you underbid or you undercharge, serve them well. And the next time you bid a project for them, we're going to have the tools to be able to really bid that more effectively. And so this stalls a lot of people out. It prevents them from moving forward. And so I just want to say, like, undercharging isn't the end of the world. It's not a good long-term business strategy, but if it happens, you're going to be okay. You can recover from it and continue to move forward. So hopefully that dismantles that a little bit for you. So the next thing I want to talk through really is understanding the total cost of a project. This is where I think for a lot of us who come from a background working in an organization, we don't always have visibility on all of the different costs that go into what it is that we're doing. And so there's 3 different categories that I found to be particularly important that we factor in when we're building a bid. The first is time spent. The second is cost to deliver. And the third is volatility. So to kind of look through each of those different areas, we'll start with time spent. So time spent is something that most creatives are really good at understanding because we're sitting at our desks. I did a rebrand project recently, and I could tell you I sat at my desk, I stared at Adobe Illustrator, and I worked for hours doing that. So we understand that, like we feel that time worked part of it. So the actual work is an element for sure. But there are other things that we tend to skip over. We tend to skip over the meeting. If you skip forward one slide for me, Stephanie, we'll have a list of some of the elements that go into that. So we have the meetings. So was there like a pre-meeting? Was there a meeting midway? In my rebrand process, I had the initial conversation about the project. Then I had a discovery meeting. Then I had a pitch meeting. And then I had a revisions meeting. All of those meetings took time. So while I wasn't sitting at my computer executing as a creative, I was using time. And so as you bid a project, those are factors to include in your process or in your bidding. The proposal and the pitch building. So this is another one that different people have different philosophies on this. I'm never going to charge anybody for me to pitch a bid to them. I will, however, build that into the process or into the to the bid itself once we move forward on a project. And so that's a risk I'm willing to take as a business owner. I've known some people who are not willing to do that and they want to charge for a pitch. That's fine if that's your strategy. Regardless, though, you do want to recognize this time that you're spending. And so that is time spent on the project. The next is administration. There's a lot of administration that goes into the day-to-day of our businesses. For me, I have a couple invoices that I have to send off. That's administration. Now I'm going to use Novo, so Novo's going to help me out. So they didn't ask me to say that, but like that is a legitimate piece of running your business. There's administrative stuff that you're keeping track of, and then onboarding and offboarding. So as a client comes on or like in or out of your orbit, there's going to be time spent in those processes. And so that's the bucket of time spent. There's a lot of different things that can add up there. One example of underbidding a project, I was rebranding a company and I anticipated 5 or 6 meetings for the different dialogues, the back and forth. We ended up meeting every week for 4 months. I did not include that in my bid, but every week was another hour, And so that's just an example of the time spent. So as you're thinking through the cost of a project, the time that you spend includes those things. Then next we'll move on to the cost to deliver. So cost to deliver is all of the infrastructure that you're carrying. This is the stuff that you need in order to get your job done. If you're a wedding photographer, you have to have a camera. You have to have equipment. There has to be some financial investment in those things. I'm a graphic designer by trade, and so I need a monitor. I have 2 monitors because it's often the way that we solve the problem. I have a computer. I have a keyboard. I do coaching work as well. And so I have lights, I have a camera, I have a whole setup that I've invested in order to help me be effective in what I'm doing. So all of those things are, those are the gear side of things. Software, I have the Adobe suite. I have, different tools that have been helpful for me. I have email, I have a website. All of those things go into me being able to pull off any project. You also have taxes, you have fees. If you've been around for more than 1 year, you recognize taxes are a real part of what we're doing. And so we have to account for that as we're charging. There's costs, there's those types of things. There's also the workspace itself. So I'm fortunate to be in a house that has a basement. I lived in California prior to this, and I did not have a basement. And so I was working in the garage, at the kitchen table, those types of things. But you have to be able to facilitate the getting work done. And so those are costs. Those are all factors that you want to consider into your bids. And then the last thing is utilities. If I don't have internet, if I don't have power, I'm not going to be able to have this conversation with you today. I could go to a Starbucks and borrow their power, borrow their internet, but then my cost of utilities just looks like the cost of whatever drink you get at Starbucks. So there's always going to be some cost to deliver what you're doing. So you have your time and you have your cost to deliver. And then the last thing is something that I call volatility. So volatility is something that really is up to you to kind of discern, in the sense that it's going to be based on your experience. So for me, and the list that we have here on the screen, we have responsibility. How big of a project is this? How much is on the hook for you? That's a really important factor when it comes to the type of project that you're doing. I recently took a trip out of town. I was rebranding 2 organizations. my plane landed in Austin on Saturday, and I delivered the finals for both organizations on Thursday. So less than a week. So this was high responsibility because I'm rebranding two organizations, and it was high risk. So that's another factor. How risky is this project? Are you going to be able to pull it off? Is it something that's outside of your skill set? Do you want to click one forward for me, Stephanie? If you are asked to produce something extremely quickly, then there's a good chance that it's going to cost more money. There's more volatility involved in it. There's also opportunity cost. So I'll use my rebranding story. Last week when I was out of town, it meant that I couldn't fill any other clients into any slots that I had. So essentially these two projects, they bought my whole week plus travel, plus then the next one here, physical and mental cost. I was exhausted when I got back. So it meant that it wasn't just those days that I was working, but there was also days, before and after. There was preparation, and then there was recovery. And then there's another one I think it's important to consider is the probability of scope creep. This is one where, as the particular clients that I work with are, they're really good at scope creep. I'll put it that way. And so I tend to be pretty careful in terms of when I'm having these conversations to kind of assess, okay, are we gonna go a lot beyond the scope here or not? So all of those things factor into the elements that make up volatility. So if you have a client that says we are very volatile, then if that's your assessment, then you're going to charge more for that. That's kind of a variable. Stephanie, that's a great question. Do you want me answering these now, or do you want me to wait to the end? Does it matter to you?
Whichever
Okay.
fits your flow better. I think you can hold off. I just like to catch them when they come up, and I encourage everyone to do the same.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, good. Yeah, so great point there. If any of you have questions on the things that we're walking through here, please ask them, because some of this stuff makes a ton of sense in the context of thinking through it, but it may not, land the same way for you. So if anything comes up, so Stephanie, I'll come back to your question. The question there was, how do you measure these volatility elements? Great question. All right, so we'll keep going. So the next thing here, just kind of now a reminder. So these are the three buckets. On the next slide here, we have time spent, cost to deliver, and we have volatility. So these are the three elements that are going to go into your pricing. The big takeaway that I want to really kind of land with you is this next slide. Pricing is not guessing. This is the trap, I think, for a lot of us. When we first start out, we hear messages about value-based pricing. We hear, these ideas, or we see influencers who are, in some cases, like in a rented mansion talking about how much money they've made. A lot of the stuff that we see online isn't actually real. And it kind of throws us, and it makes us discontent with the model of pricing that we're approaching. And so I don't want to discourage value-based pricing. My contention with that, though, is that you need to have a lot of confidence, and I would argue a lot of evidence that what you deliver will in fact provide the results. And I don't love that type of guarantee, just because business tends to be so volatile, especially in the creative space that we're working in. If you have a product that has a guarantee attached to it, that's fantastic. You can do that. Freelance work and really service-based work tends not to have that type of a guarantee that you can feel so confident in. Like, I can't tell you that if I rebrand your organization, I'm going to double your revenue next year. I just can't confidently say that, because there's so many other factors beyond your branding. Maybe your product's terrible. Maybe the reason you're not making money is because, the phone that you made just doesn't work well, or the camera that you're trying to manufacture, it just doesn't capture images well. Those are all real problems that you run into. And so because of that, we get into this place where we feel like, I don't know what I'm supposed to charge. Like, I feel like a logo is worth, like, I don't know, a couple thousand, I mean, 5, 10,000, 1,000. I don't know where it lives. And so that's what we're going to dismantle. And so the next slide here, it's just a screenshot, but it's of a tool that I created. It's called the pricing calculator. It's a pricing calculator that I made. This is something I use in my business. And I want to walk through the nuts and bolts of how it's built. So I'm happy to give this to you. You'll have my email at the end of the slides here. Shoot me an email. I have it set up so you can access it for free, but or build it on your own. That's fine too. But I want to walk through the thinking behind it, because that's really where the power is. The power is not in the spreadsheet itself; it's in the thought process behind it. So there's 2 tabs to this calculator. This is the first, and what we're doing here is we're discovering what our base rate is. This is the thing for me that drives the reality of your pricing. So the examples that I used here for base pay, I pulled these off of Glassdoor. Now, fair warning, there are a million pop-ups and they want all of your information. I don't know how I got through the gauntlet to get these numbers the way I did. I tried to go back another time and I was like, there's a lot of pop-ups here. So fair warning there. But basically what I did, there's plenty of places to research salaries, so you don't have to use Glassdoor. That's the one that I pulled from. But I pulled, it was a graphic design position for X, for formerly Twitter, just for clarity, Microsoft and Dropbox, I think, were the 3 companies that I looked at. So the assumption here is we're going to be working in the tech sector. That's the group of businesses we're going to be serving. And so what we want to do is we want to get a sense of, with my level of experience, what is the expected pay range for a role in that industry. The reason this matters is every industry that we serve has a different set of expectations when it comes to your salary. So the example I shared earlier, that was working in a nonprofit section, or a nonprofit organization. It was a church. And so our pay is not, it's not known for being very high. We'll put it that way. So the joke that we would always say is, you don't go into working for a church to become rich. And I can tell you that's very true. So the problem that we were running into is that someone was coming to us with a wage or a salary expectation that was far beyond what was normative for our experience. Now, that doesn't mean that that wage was wrong. That just means that there was tension in that conversation. So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to understand what is a reasonable salary for somebody serving the industry that I'm serving. And so what you do is you find those annual wages and then you divide it by 2080. That's 52 weeks a year, 40 hours a week. You can adjust that number if you say, I only want to work 6 hours a week, or so. I mean, that's a different conversation. 6 hours a day. That's what I'm trying to say. If you only want, if you want to work fewer hours, you can reduce that. But what we're trying to get at is, what is the hourly wage that is expected for these industries? So if I called up Microsoft and I said, hey, I'm looking for a graphic design position that pays around $55 an hour, they would say, that's about in line with what we pay. That's not total compensation, but that's about in line with what they pay. So what this does is this just anchors us in reality. That's all it does for us. We have to now, so we figured out our average rate. In this instance, it's $50 an hour. Now, remember the slides that we just talked about. We have the cost of time, which this covers, but then we also have all of the other costs. I had to buy my own computer. I had to make sure that my schedule was clear in order to travel. I had to make sure that I have all of my, software licenses, all that kind of stuff. So with that, we now use a multiplier. I'm a fan of using a 2 as my multiplier. And so what I do is I find the base rate of my industry and then I double it, because that typically covers the investment costs that I have. I want you to hear that number can change. It's not really, it's not like a mandatory number that it has to be doubled, but that for me is the great starting point. Again, we're looking for that base that protects us, puts us in a position where we're actually making money on our projects, and isn't, undermining. So we're spending all of this time and not getting a reasonable salary or reasonable pay for that. Certain projects, like I'd mentioned, if it's high volatility, you may increase it. And so on my logo project, I charged more because of the complexity that's involved in the project. Travel, speed, the speed at which decisions needed to be made. There's a lot of factors that go into that. And so with this math, what we have is we have a base rate of $100 an hour. So that's what we're now charging as we're looking to interact with clients. Now, the next slide is really where the magic happens. So all of this is just to give us a sense of, how much do I charge per hour? Okay, I do not like charging hourly. That is never my recommendation to anyone. But you need to know that rate so that you can start calculating a reasonable and accurate price when you're bidding your projects. The reason I like bidding projects rather than going hourly is because your reward as a freelancer is your skill and your efficiency. And so the first time you do a project, if it takes you 10 hours, the second time you do that same project, it should not take you 10 hours. Most of the time, you're going to have a lot of the processes and systems already built for you so that it's way faster the second time. I laid out a book for someone and it took me 20 hours. The next time I laid out that book, it took me 3 hours. I didn't somehow get magically faster. I had a template already built for me. I had already done all of the page layout, thought work, the structural building, and now I just needed to replace the content and I could really optimize my processes. So if you're charging hourly, you have now lost 17 hours worth of salary. But now you are ready to go, and you should be rewarded for that efficiency. Yes, great point there. Stephanie saying this also works with gathering equipment. Absolutely. You shouldn't charge the full camera price every time you shoot a wedding. You should buy that once, and then over time that continues to benefit you. So those are the things that are going into this. So you now have your base rate, and what we're going to do is we're going to go through and we're going to start mapping out what it costs for us to do a project. You'll notice here that on the left and on the right, I'm asking you to do the same thing twice, but I want you to have two different lenses. On the left, I want you to be wildly optimistic. This is where I find a lot of creatives tend to be very optimistic. Unfortunately, the optimism works against us in the creation side. Creatives are pessimistic in other areas, but not in how long will this project take. We tend to be pretty optimistic there. So we're going to walk through a brand strategy, or like a rebrand kind of build out. And we're going to do a worst case scenario and a best case scenario. So best case, how much time do I think it's going to take me to build a brand strategy? I mean, I think I could pull that off in like 5 hours. So I put 5 hours in the minimum time category. And then you'll see it just calculates it out based on your base rate. So that would cost $500. Okay, so that's what I should bill my client for that role or that job. Next, we're going to go into logo design. How much time does it take me to build a logo, to create that, concept it, do all my iterations, all my revisions, all that kind of stuff? 10 hours. Okay, that's a very optimistic, very optimistic thought process or guess there. And then what about a brand guide? Maybe 5 hours. A business set, maybe 3. Swag, a shirt, a hat, kind of examples, maybe another 3 hours. So if everything goes perfect, I think this project should take me to the point where I bid $2,300. So in this case, it just adds up to be 26 hours. So is that right? 26 hours? Yeah, there we go. So that would be what I would charge, $2,300. Oh, sorry, there's a math issue there. The swag's not being included on the last number. So it should be 2,600. It's probably wrong in both categories though, so it'll be easy to. Oh yeah, no, it's not. Okay. Anyway, I'll make sure I fix that. This is real stuff here. These are real tools that I'm using. So you could see though, my bid here would be $2,600 on the left. Now we're going to do the same thing, but think through the lens of this is the worst case scenario. Okay, your client is very picky. There's a lot of revisions. Things go wrong. It's just really hard to get a logo idea to come together. You go through, more iterations than you need to. It's just things just aren't clicking. It's a really complex brand. There's a lot of reasons for this, but let's plan for the worst case scenario. So in this case, then I think it would take me 10 hours then to build a brand strategy. It's particularly nuanced. It's complicated. Logo design, I'm gonna say 25 hours. That's what I think it'll take. Brand guide, 10 hours. That's probably what it'll take me to build one. I want to make sure I'm really thorough. Business set, 5 hours, and then swag, another 5 hours. So on the right now, you have your worst case scenario. On your left, you have your best case scenario. I just want to call out the difference in price, regardless of the missing $300. A $2,600 versus $5,500. That's the difference in your bid. So what's happening here is our optimism is causing us to aim extremely low. I have found most of the time that the maximum time is what we drift toward. That's where clients lead us. That's where problems lead us. That's where challenges lead us. And so in a lot of ways, what I recommend is always plan for the worst case scenario. One of the things that you're doing when you do it this way is you are preparing to serve your clients extremely well. And when you do that, there's a much higher chance that you're going to earn repeat business. So it's a little bit counterintuitive. I think often we think I need to charge as little as possible so that I save the client as much as possible so that they'll want to keep working with me. The problem is that when we do that, we have to pack our schedules extremely full, too full, so full that we can't actually pay attention to our clients in the way that we should. When we charge enough, we can actually really lean into customer service. We can really lean into making sure that we are delivering. A great example of this is every time I brand an organization, I promise 2 versions of a logo. And so far, every time I've done it, when on my first pitch, I say, look, as I was working, another idea jumped, and I think it's really compelling, and I think it's worth considering. So I'm including it in this set as a third option. I cannot tell you the number of times. I mean, every time I've done that, the client's like, are you serious right now? Like, this is incredible. The only reason I'm able to do that is because I price my projects in a way that lets me explore, that lets me be creative, and it buys me the margin and the space that I need to do my best work. And so understanding your tendency to underbid is actually the superpower baked into this tool, because what this has done for me is it is, in a sense, it's kind of tricked me psychologically to say, I appreciate your optimism. I appreciate your wanting to do good work, but you're wrong. And it's going to make you way too stressed, way too pressured, and put way too much into every project. Like, you're just not able to balance it all. So I have found that really leaning into this, it's a weird way to say it, but leaning into the cynical side of pricing has unlocked a stability for me that I didn't expect it would. So a totally non-design example here. When I started first pushing into kind of exploring my own business, I was doing barbecue. I love barbecue. I started a YouTube channel back in 2009 talking about barbecue. And I started doing some barbecue events for my church. And one of the big things that we did every year is we had a big Christmas Eve event. And so I would cater that event for the volunteers that were basically giving up their Christmas Eves in order to facilitate this event. So one year I was going to do smoked tri-tip. So that's the California influence. It's kind of like California's version of brisket. But so I was going to do smoked tri-tip and smoked chicken. The night that I was smoking the chicken, it was abnormally cold. It was freezing rain, and I could not get the smoker up to the temperature that it needed in order for the food to be safe. So I had, I don't even know what it was, 30 pounds of chicken in this smoker. And I recognized that I did not feel comfortable serving this food. But fortunately, I had charged enough in my bid for this project that I could actually do what I believed to be right, which was not serve the chicken. And so as I was practicing this talk, I stumbled on this part. I was going to say I ate the cost, but I didn't eat the chicken. So I basically absorbed the cost of this because I knew that it wasn't a smart move to feed, undercooked or potentially not food safe chicken. That was a very bad decision. But what it taught me was that I needed to always make sure I was pricing enough so that I had the margin I needed to be able to do the right thing. And so in the case of serving our clients, that's really what we're looking for. And I find that this, cynical approach to pricing really does help me serve my clients better. That helps me produce better work. I mean, dramatically better work. Part of why I left, there's a lot of reasons why I left, working at a place to start my own business. But one of the byproducts of it that I was not expecting, to be totally honest, was the quality of my work improved dramatically. And I realized that it's because I stepped off of the urgent treadmill all the time when I was able to price in margin into my life. So I have more margin, more space to breathe, and it's showing up in my work. And then when I'm doing that type of work, I can check in with clients. I can throw in freebies in a way that's not punitive to me. and I continue to build longer term relationships, which is financially very helpful. It adds stability to what is often an unstable or an unstable area of life in freelance. So that's kind of the power of this tool. The other thing that I just want to call out, over on the far right, you'll see a column that just says actual time. Big fan of always tracking what is actually going on. And so in this case, we expected maybe brand strategy would take 5 hours, it would take 10 hours. Log it. So what this is designed to do is you just duplicate the tab for every project. And so for client number one, I thought it was going to take 5 hours and I thought it was going to take 10 hours between my two bids. What did it actually take me? If it actually took me 8 hours, write it down. And what you'll find is you'll find two things. You'll find what time actually was spent relative to the bid that you created, but then you'll also find what will this actually take me to execute moving forward. Most of the time, it gives you a really good average and a baseline. Stephanie asked a great question about time tracking, and I'll share my solution there. But what it does for you is it now starts building an incredibly justifiable and supportable and related to reality pricing approach. So if you come to me and you say, Matt, I would love for you to rebrand my organization or brand my organization fresh, I would say to you, great, here's my process, here's my timeline, this is what it costs. And then you'll say, whoa, why does it cost that much? And I'll say, because over a period of time, as I've studied my own work, I've realized this is the amount of time that it takes. And it allows me to give you everything that you need, and maybe then some, but it lets me serve you in a way that accomplishes all of the things that you need to get done. So like I can justify it in a way that I couldn't otherwise, when it's like, I don't know, I mean, $4,000 sounds pretty good. Like, let's go with $4,000. Like, so the conversation is different. And I say a lot of this, actually, I formalized this after a conversation, a bid with an organization. It's a solar panel. They sell solar panels. They're an installer, I guess. But we were having a conversation about money, and that was the question: why does it cost that much? For them, the reason it costs so much is because they have labor installing things on the roof. They have inventory. They have licenses. They have fees. They know how to itemize it. Nobody knows how to itemize what we do. But when we itemize it like this, and this helps us kind of reveal that, we can have an extremely informed conversation moving forward. So that is kind of the nuts and bolts of this. If you want to skip forward one slide, this is really the win that I have found by implementing a system like this. It protects you from undercharging. That was kind of the sales pitch of this conversation. Like, that's my goal. I just want you to be protected from that. But it also helps you confidently explain your rates. When you know what goes into it, you're able to defend it in a way that is not defensive. It's not like, oh, because what do you mean? You're trying to undercharge me? Like, you don't have to get amped up about it. It doesn't have to be a tension-filled conversation. Instead, it becomes that's a great question. Let me pull the curtain back for you and let you know a little bit of what goes into this. We have a discovery process. We have logos, where what we do is we actually iterate between 40 and 60 different versions of an icon for you. We then pair it up with fonts, and then we choose brand colors that really resonate with your audience and align with what you're trying to do. From there, we build a brand book. The brand book actually empowers you over the long haul to continue to benefit from this investment in this process, so that you don't have to keep calling me and asking me branding questions. And then we also apply it across a business set, and then we implement it across swag if that's something that you're interested in. All of a sudden, the tension goes away, and wow, this guy knows what he's talking about, or this gal, she's good. We want to move forward with them. But what you're doing is you're just confidently explaining it. That's really where I think, at least what I've seen, that's where the power lives. You're also able to build your projects fast. I spent days wrestling over bids over the years. Days. I would ask my wife about, what do you think? Is this too much? Is that a good number? She's guessing. Like, I'm guessing. Yeah, that's not helpful. Getting more guessers in the room isn't going to solve any of your problems. But now I say, how much time are the different phases going to be? There you go. The math does its thing, and that's it. There's your number. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time to feel comfortable with the number, and that's okay. but you have it and you have it quickly. And now you can articulate it in a very clear way to the client. And then also improves your bid accuracy. That's the other kind of element here that we really want to kind of dial in on. You're going to get bids that are an actual reflection of the time that you're spending. Between those two bids, I almost always recommend choosing the more cynical pricing, the higher rate. If you feel uncomfortable, you can average between the two. That's fine too. But as you're tracking, you'll discover a pattern over time, and that will be a pattern that just continues to let you tweak and fine tune your pricing so that you're making sure that you're pricing yourself fairly. So that's it. That's what I got. So we'll talk about some questions. Stephanie, do you want to talk about things first, or do we want to jump into Q&A? What's the sequence there that you want to go through?
Oops. Yes, so we can actually go ahead and jump into this segment here where if you'd like to just talk a little bit about Novo and how you've been utilizing it and how it relates here. I know I was already had like the invoicing piece in mind when I saw the tool, but and then I threw another question in there. But that way, while you're talking about the application here, folks can enter any questions that they wanted to make sure to ask you. And then we've got some lined up as well. So feel free to take it away.
Okay, great. So the thing for me, this is an interesting conversation. So when Stephanie really, but when Novo reached out and asked about, does it make sense to kind of have these types of conversations, have conversations for businesses? Really, the qualifier for me was that I use Novo, and it's been really helpful for me. I'm not a big fan of trying to figure out a way to cram a product or a concept into my, I don't know what I think is good. I use Novo for invoicing, and it was a big reason I chose it. But the thing that I found, you have this whole conversation about pricing. Think about how are you strategic? How can you be calculated and clear? When that wraps up with a pretty janky solution on the back end of so call my bank or mail me a check here. I feel like it just sort of it disrupts the whole process that you've spent so much time investing in. Whereas when I send an invoice with Novo, it's super clean. It is remarkably simple for the client to be able to do whatever they need to do. I am a firm believer that the less friction you include in your process, the more success you will have. And that is doubly true in the phase of payment. When I go to an organization or a company and it's like, I would like to buy your product. And they're like, so that's really actually complicated. I'm like, I'm out. I'm not interested. And so for me, the invoicing that Novo provides just baked in has been incredible. So that's a piece of why, that slide is there for me. It's just a really helpful tool for my business. Like I mentioned in one of the ways that we allocate time, we spend time in the administrative side, and Novo saves me time there. And so I hate the administrative side. That's not why I got into business. I could do it. Some elements are okay, but it really does streamline so many of the processes for me that is very helpful. The other thing, this is the next slide in here. The other thing, this is not a talk on taxes or any of that kind of stuff, but as we think through pricing, as you think through those different buckets, I just have a reserve. Basically what happens is somebody pays me money and my reserves trigger, and it splits that money out into the different places where it needs to belong. So I always do that for taxes. I set aside 30% personally. And so part of that's, I'm just extra scared about the tax side of it. I'm like, nope, I'm gonna be extra sure. And so if I have leftovers, that's great. but it's just it's so helpful for me to not have to worry about it. Again, it's removing administration work through automation. And so having multiple reserves is fantastic. So if let's say you have a camera, you're a wedding photographer. I mean, you may want to set it up so that 10%, 15%, 5% of every transaction goes straight into a camera fund, equipment fund, whatever. It's just a really easy way for you to, in a moment of clarity, plan for the future and let the tool just do the heavy lifting for you. So yeah, so that's my thoughts just on in terms of how Novo has been really helpful for me. And then yeah, that's me. That's the best way to connect. If you want access to the tool, it's a Google Doc. I think it's either it's either a Google Doc or an Excel spreadsheet. I forget how I landed the plane eventually, but just shoot me an email at that email address. Just mention that you saw this and you'd like access to that, and I'll send you the link to grab that. I'll go through a couple of these questions. Super helpful to see these. Let's see here. Clarifying. Let's see. Any tips for asking clarifying questions versus using things like forms when leads are generated to filter? So one of the things for me, a lot of this I think comes down to just as you've been doing something for a long time, you kind of anticipate what some of the problems might be in a situation. I like asking questions that are a little bit uncomfortable. So for me personally, I'm very comfortable in the space of tension there. And so what I'll do is I'll ask questions that kind of push people to have an opinion. What I struggle with is when everybody's very generalized and they're very vague in their requests. And so with the organizations that I was rebranding in the discovery phase, I asked a question that really kind of revealed who they are a little bit. And that's what I need, in order to brand them effectively. So in the intake process, I'll ask the questions about money. I mean, I like that question right out of the gate, maybe not the very first question, but when somebody comes to me and they say, hey, I'm interested in branding an organization, I'll say, that's great. So talk to me about, your organization, what you're looking for, what the problem is with your current logo. And then once we get to once they answer that, I'll say, okay, great. Do you have a budget in mind? What are you thinking? Are you thinking 1,000, 5,000, 10,000, 100,000? Like, where do you live on that spectrum? I typically qualify that by saying, it's helpful for me to know where you are, because if you're looking for $100,000 solution, that's not typically the type of work that I provide. I mean, I'm happy to bill you for it. I always throw in jokes like that. And then if you're looking for something on the $1,000 range, that's below what I typically will do. And so it's very helpful for me just to know what your expectations are. So I like to really get into some of those questions because I want to value their time and my time. So the faster I can get out of the situation, if it's one that I should be out of, the better. And so I'll ask questions like that very clearly expose if there's friction between how I operate and their expectations. That's really what I'm looking for. So if you like working very flexibly, then you ask that question. Okay, so like, how accessible are you expecting me to be in this process? I'm traveling to Thailand and I'll be working at 3 a.m. Like, that's when I want to do my work. Is that a problem for you? If that's a value for you. I'm not traveling to Thailand, so that's no problem for me, but those are the kinds of things that I explore, is figure out where the problems might be in the process so that you can either speak to them with confidence and kind of move those things to be assets for you, or you can recognize this isn't a good fit for me. So those are some of the things that I like to do. I like to be very clear, very direct, and honest. This is a partnership. If I'm not the right fit for this client, then I don't want to try to shoehorn it in to be a bad fit. That doesn't work out well over time. And so I am who I am. I charge what I charge, and there you go. If you want to look for somebody else, that's great. Maybe even I can recommend somebody. So I don't hold any animosity if it's a bad fit, but I do want to know if it's a bad fit. So that's kind of the direction I go there. Let's see here. Yeah, go ahead.
And then that makes perfect sense. I was just going to add, I think the next question that I had, I'm looking to the chat to see if there's anything new.
Gotcha.
I was just wondering, you said you'd share the systems and tools that you use to measure your time, or any tips for gauging spent if you don't use tools. Like you said, there's definitely the experience that brings that for you, but
yeah. Yeah, no, it's a great question. And honestly, it's a question that every single freelancer encounters every time they do a project for the first time. And so there's three things that I would recommend. The first is, if this is something that's simple enough of a task, I legitimately would recommend do it. Like, do it on your own first. So let's say you're going to get something that's like, I want you to design a postcard for our organization. Okay, great. Like, a postcard shouldn't take you more than a couple hours to do. But for you to identify how long it takes you, like, literally make a postcard. Like, pick a fictional event, make up some copy, have, ChatGPT or whoever, like, have something create content for you, and just like make a mock-up and time yourself as you're doing it to get a baseline on it. On bigger projects, I recently had a client ask me to do video work for them. And so I told them very, very clearly up front, I said, I don't do this normally. I like it. I think I know how to do it. I'm probably going to rely on templates. Are you okay with that? And they said yes to all of those things. And then I said, okay, this might be inefficient. And they said, that's okay. We just need it done. And I said, okay. So what I do in those situations where it's unclear is I say, I don't know what it's going to cost yet, but are you open to me learning on your dime, essentially? And then in that case, because that was too big of a project for me to do one and then like know the cost. But what I did in that process is I timed it. And so that's really like, so this is the tool I use. It's called, well, it was called Timular. Now it's called Early, I think. And it's basically a little, diamond thing. And you flip it over. So right now, it's probably going to start. Yep. So now it's saying that I'm charging one of my clients. And then, oh, nope, not that one. So I flip it over. Now it's saying I'm charging a different client. And so what it does for me, so this is a problem that I know that I experience. I don't know if all creatives are this way. Out of sight, out of mind. So I need a physical device on my desk. Otherwise, I will forget 100% that I'm supposed to be tracking my time. It's a really weird problem for me because I've had to go into like the physical, time trackers. But there's a handful of tools like this. So Early is not the only solution. Let me double check here. Is it Early? Is that the name? I don't know. They just rebranded. Yeah, Early, formerly Timular. And so it looks like an hourglass, a green hourglass logo. But I've seen a handful of these, and it's a piece of hardware that partners with software. You can use any time tracker that you like. I know, I think Harvest has it. I think stuff like Asana and ClickUp probably has it baked in as well, project management tools. You could use a stopwatch if you want. The reason I like a tool like this is it's actually attached to a larger time tracker, and then each face is assigned to a different client. And so I used this actually when I was leading a creative team as well to get a baseline of what the pace was of my team. And I found that it's actually really helpful for me to also get a baseline. The other thing that you can do, and this is a little bit more of a like, it'll feel not as great probably because you'll miss the mark on your bids because they will be guessing at that point. But you can go through a round of projects where you're just guesstimating your prices, but then track how long it's taking you so that you get an actual sense. And then you can now populate the calculator tool, the bid builder, a little bit more intelligently in the sense that you'll have more accuracy, and then it'll really ramp up your pricing. And so what I would find is that I would charge for a logo, I'd probably charge, 1,000, probably 1,000 to $1,500. But then after tracking it, my rate really should be between 5 and 7,500. Like just because of the amount of time that I'm putting in, the amount of effort, the amount of resources that they're getting at the end of it, like the whole package is way more robust than I thought it was. And I only reveal that because of tracking the amount of time that's going into it. Now, the beautiful part is that, that $6,500 range, that's the first time you do it. But now I have a brand book and I just replace the files. You know what I mean? Like I just update it. It's very quick. So that saves me time. I have my intake questions already dialed in. So that saves me time. So you begin to get more profit as you get more efficiency and more experience. But yeah, I would start with a tool like that to really begin eliminating guesses, start defining some of these variables, and know how long it takes you to get this stuff done. So, okay.
And
Let's
then
see.
I had another one,
Yeah.
but I wanted to check in with Robin actually, because early on, Robin, you said that you were looking to revisit your pricing policies and see where you could improve. So I just wanted to raise that and see if you had anything outstanding that you wanted to ask or focus in on while we have the time here with Matt.
Yeah, I love that. Let's see. One thing as Robin is as Robin's typing, um, one of the things that you said, Stephanie, in here was the security around this volatility and pricing. It really is security. That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to mitigate risk for yourself so that you don't overextend and you don't feel like you're just so stuck because survival is a bad place. Creativity tends not to exist when you're in like a survival mode. And so, yeah, building those factors into your pricing is so helpful. It really does elevate the quality of your work.
How do you tend to measure the volatility elements? And I can pull them back up or I can put them into the chat.
Yeah,
Um,
no, it's great. I remember seeing that there. Let's see. Yep, yep, that's great. Yeah. So real quick before that, Robin says, um, the two big things that she needs to change: accounting for the worst case scenario and figuring in my costs to deliver. Absolutely, yes. Those are going to be pretty transformative for you, I think, in your business, because it will both help you actually price, actually get the payment the right the right amount for the work that you're doing and putting in. But then it'll also help you over time as you have a cost that comes up, because computers go bad, like lights go bad or whatever, whatever tools you're using, those eventually will need to be replaced. And so it just helps you have a little bit more space and breathing room to be able to do that. So that's excellent. I think those would be really helpful. Um, in terms of the volatility, I really think the big ones for me are the opportunity cost. What is this? What is this project taking away from you the potential of? This happened early on for me, which I was fortunate about, and I charged a lot, like more than I felt comfortable, to be honest. But it was an organization that was in a pretty tough spot, and so they said, we want to buy 20 hours a week from you. I'm like, whoa, like that is actually going to hamper my ability to build my business, because you're taking half of my time every week. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, well, how am I supposed to build a business? And I'm like, well, wait a minute. What if I just bill them for like everything I need to be making? Like, and so that was really what kind of clicked for me. It was almost out of desperation in the sense of like, this client's going to bankrupt me. And I was like, wait a minute. I don't think that's how this is supposed to work. I think that this should actually be a really good thing for me. And so the first form of volatility is like, what will this do to disrupt the operations of your business and the operations of your building, your pivoting, your marketing, all of the things that you're normally doing? Will this help you, or will this like, slow you down? So that's the first. And then the second element of that for me is just unexpected demands on your time. I have a client right now and they're extremely last minute. Like, I got an email yesterday at 2 o'clock and they're like, can we have this by 3 o'clock? Now, full disclosure, that is par for the course working with churches. And so that is like expected for me. I know that. I understand that. But that volatility is like a time, it's an immediacy and a time demand with not much margin or lead time, which is why my rate with them reflects that. They're a super last minute organization. Not all the organizations I work with are that way. Some of them are extremely well planned out. So my pricing even varies with each client based on the probability of them being that way, super last minute. And in that case, it's then demanding time from me in a very short period of time. So they're going to demand an hour from me, but they need it in the next 4 hours. That's different than at some point this month, can you give me an hour? And so I like to have a lot of flexibility with my time. And so that's kind of that's the other way I would look at that volatility. Do they expect really fast turnarounds? They're going to get a different price. Are they, high demand with my time? They're going to get a different price. So that's kind of what the volatility factor boils down to for me. What does it pull you away from? And one quick caveat, that can also be, it pulls you away from quality of life. So next week I'm going on vacation and I am wanting clients to give me lead time. When a client doesn't give me lead time, it's pulling me away from something that I care about and something that I want to enjoy. I don't mind doing work on vacation, but I don't want to be like this constant, like I can't go out and do things because I'm always tethered to my computer. So that's kind of a piece of that volatility, is how much disruption will they cause in my day to day and in the life I'm trying to create. How much will they disrupt that? The more you disrupt it, the more I will charge you. So that's kind of where volatility fits for me.
Understood. And I think that makes sense because you also earlier spoke to having the conversation where you figured out whether you're the right fit as far as like needs and expectations. And then just like you did with the actual time spent, there's also like the actual relationship building. And
Yep.
that you can kind of accommodate, like, yes, we know we are aligned in these ways. And I'm going to, budget for how much I can invest or go out of my way to invest while I'm supposed to be compensated
Yep.
so that we can maintain this and actually sustain it
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
speak. Okay, that's
Yeah.
fantastic, and I think it brings it does turn that cynicism, which I would love a different. I love
Yeah.
security more than that, because I think there is
Yeah.
a practical optimism that
Yeah.
you're pointing to here.
Yeah. So probably better language would be, you can price this project to be transactional, or you can price this project to be partnership. And so if you become a partner, you are now invested in, you're buying into their mission, at least on some level. You're buying into their goals. You value what they value, and you champion what they champion. If it's transactional, it's tell me the change that you want. I'll get it to you tomorrow. Boom, done. Like that's it. There's no like, who are you and what do you care about? And how can I find ways to help you move your mission forward or help you move your objective? Or, hey, I thought of a way that I actually think you could sell even more of this. Like that's what a partnership looks like. And that's what pricing it correctly does, is it lets you now be a partner with them in their business. So good catch. I'll change that the next time.
Oh no, no change necessary. I feel like it's definitely you've given us many ways to conceptualize, and like I really appreciate you speaking to your both professional and personal experience with navigating this, and just wanted to encourage everyone to go ahead and stay connected with Matt and with Jump to Freelance. The links to the website, the LinkedIn to connect with Matt, and then YouTube are all in the pinned in the chat there at the top. So I think for the next event we have with you, I do want to make sure to share that if we have that up yet. And oh, nope,
I
not
don't know
yet.
if we do. Yeah, not yet.
So we'll keep you all posted for the next one for sure. Angela, thank you. Awesome. Thank you so much for that positive feedback, y'all, and for taking the time to invest in your business today and really continue building these essential elements in and like kind of being willing to take on the more complex side of things. I know I've done my guessing for pricing over the years, and it's definitely refreshing to see things laid out in such a clear way. Thank you, Matt.
Awesome. Yeah, you bet. Thanks for doing this. These have been great.
Right. And y'all, okay, I wanted to say, we're at the hour. So I want to say thank you one more time on behalf of Novo, and we'll be back with more. Let me go ahead and share our calendar here so that y'all can tune in. We've got a bunch more events coming next month as well, each week, covering a variety of topics. So please do stay tuned, see what might be resonating for you so we can keep building together. All right. Y'all have a great weekend.